Welcome to the last Puree training video in our series. Let's review what we have learned so far. Residents are prescribed a puree diet because they are having trouble swallowing and/or chewing properly. In order to provide safe and tasty food for these residents, we must follow these 5 steps in preparing all purees, hot or cold. Cook the food according to the Webtrition recipe and use quality ingredients, not leftovers. Puree the food in a Robocoo or a Vitamix blender using hot broth, gravy, or milk, not water, and scrape the sides of the bowl frequently. Force all purees through a fine mesh sieve or a tammy to remove bits and lumps. Reheat hot food purees to a minimum of 165 degrees and chill cold food purees to a maximum of 40 degrees. Taste all purees and season, if necessary, with additional salt and ground white pepper only. Once a puree is ready for service by following those steps in processing, there are 4 critical and 1 non-critical tests you can and should conduct to ensure the texture is safe for our residents. Appearance is the first test. The puree should be totally smooth and free from lumps, bits, fibers, and skin. The fork drip test is another critical test. The puree should sit in a mound above the fork without dripping or flowing continuously through the tines of the fork. The spoon tilt test is the third critical test. The food should sit in a mound above the spoon and slide off cleanly in one lump, leaving little if any residue. It should not be sticky. The fork pressure test is the last critical test. The purees should retain the indentations of a fork that is pressed lightly into it. A non-critical test, available when the other tests cannot be accomplished, is the finger test, where the puree slides easily through the fingers without dripping or flowing and leaves little, if any, residue. Once you have a perfectly processed, safe, and tasty puree, there is one last thing to do. Fill out the quality control report. The cook who prepares the purees fills this out. It should be in a binder near your texture-modified diet preparation station. List the name and the number of the Webtrition recipe used for each puree item. Use 2 pages if necessary. Circle yes or no if the item was strained through a sieve or a tammy. Check the box if the item needed corrective action, for instance, if lumps or fibers were observed. Make sure to explain what the corrective action taken was. For example, the puree was restrained. And last, the manager on duty, dietitian, executive chef, or director must sign off on each meal's quality control report. Thank you for all the work you do to provide the best tasting, nutritious, and safe food for our most at-risk residents. You will now be asked to complete a written competency test to assess your skill retention. A score of 100 is mandatory. If you score below this, you will re-watch the video series and take the test again. All questions about the puree process should be brought to your manager, chef, or director.